When they came for us, they came from the wild places. The places beyond the edges of our map. The places beyond where we are allowed to go. The deep desert. The empty seas. The frozen wastes. The wilds beyond. That is where they came from. And when we first encountered them, we thought they were merely other strange beasts. They were, indeed, quite strange. They weren't strong like other beasts, they weren't fast, and they certainly weren't like us. So when we first encountered them, they simply ran off into the darkness, too quick to get a good look at. It just appeared like any other beast. It walked on two legs, it carried itself with a strange sort of emotion, almost like it was examining everything around it, but it couldn't be as smart as us. And when they ran away into the wilds and the darkness, we let them be. But then they started getting closer to our settlements, to our cities, to our families. And that's when we began hunting them. We thought that they would be like a bear or a lion. Kill one or two of them and make them afraid of you, and then they would retreat from your presence. Except that's not what happened. I remember I was on a hunting trip with some coworkers when we saw these beasts. There were about a dozen of them. They were gathered around in a cave, and they were just staring at us with those strange eyes. And we simply killed what we thought was the main leader, the tallest one, and we thought the others would retreat further into the cave. Instead, they ran towards us, shrieking in that bizarre, loud voice shrieking that they have. We had to kill them all so they wouldn't hurt us. Their blood was strange, an unnaturally red color, and the smell that they had was just pungent and unpleasant. So we left their corpses behind, thinking it would be a warning for others. When we came back the next day, we found that the bodies had been dragged away, buried beneath the soil nearby, which was odd. Animals don't bury their dead, and these were just animals like any other, weren't they? Still, more and more of them came, and as they got closer to us, our people began to get more and more scared. We were afraid for our children, we were afraid for our elderly, we were afraid that they would steal food from us. And honestly, when they first started coming into the cities, that was the first things they were doing. They kept stealing food, going into stores, going into restaurants, taking anything that they could eat, and running out into the wild. Sometimes just sitting inside the store and eating what they can. But even when we tried scaring them off or using animal control, they kept coming. So after a while, when the government approved a kill on sight order for all these strange creatures, we thought that would be the end of it. And for a while, we were safe. We stopped seeing them in public, we stopped seeing them in the wilds, and we thought that they were either extinct or finally pushed back where they belonged. But then the incidents started happening. We found that there were traps set all over the place. Nails down where our cars were, wires where they would cause someone to trip, or even just as our people winding up sick or injured in their homes. That's when we realized that we didn't chase these creatures off. They just got smarter, and they were starting to fight back against us. So that became the big debate of the government. Some people thought that it was our mistake, that if we just gave them some space and retreated and stopped trying to fight them, maybe they would stop fighting us, that these creatures would eventually just have enough space and they would stop hurting us. Others thought that this was the time to escalate, to finally fight back harder. They thought that the creatures hurting us meant that we just had to hurt them back. Well, ultimately, they decided to fight back harder. And for a while, it just made things so much worse. The military were deployed into people's homes and neighborhoods just to fight these creatures, and these creatures kept appearing in more and more places. The capital, the outposts, the settlements, the towns, the villages. Everywhere that we settled, we could find more of these creatures. And there was only so much military to go around. One-on-one, we could certainly take on these creatures in a straight-up fight. They were smaller than us, they were weaker than us, and we had many weapons, and they were stupid creatures. Trouble, though, was there was almost never a fair fight. They would either sneak up on us in the dark, or they would simply set up traps for us. Sometimes they would find ways to outnumber us and then take us out. Eventually, we lost the wilds altogether. The creatures were too dangerous, and we retreated to the farmlands. But the creatures kept going for our animals and kept wiping them out. Eventually, we found that we couldn't survive. Our food sources were being cut off, and we were competing with the creatures. Our military was overwhelmed, and we couldn't find ways of outsmarting them. Sure, a normal one of us could easily figure out how to escape a tripwire, or maybe even figure out how to lock a door. Trouble, though, was they were getting clever. And they kept learning, and they kept telling their young, and they kept telling their next generations. So when we found a tactic that worked, like, say, for example, burning in where they nested, they found new ways to survive. They found ways of picking up their nests and going. When we tried killing them as a warning to others, it only seemed to harden their hearts, and they wanted it to get back at us more. Eventually, the fire eaters and governments realized that, quite simply, we were outnumbered and they were smarter than us. And no matter what we did to adapt, they would just adapt just as quickly. Sure, we had the weapons, we had the technology, but they were starting to figure it out. Sometimes it was simple, memorizing the passcode to a door. Sometimes it was something more complex, like learning how to use a flamethrower or how to steal a car. But these creatures kept adapting, and no matter what we did, it felt like they were adapting quicker than us. So eventually, we attempted a diplomatic route. Don't ask me how, but one of the veterinarians said that they thought they could communicate with the creatures, that their language was primitive, but that it was a language. So they sent the veterinarian along with 2 soldiers to where they thought one of the leaders of these creatures were. They sent the veterinarian back along with the soldiers with their heads removed. By this point, everyone was talking about the war on the creatures and how we had to fight and that we had to allow, and that war was the only answer. Anyone found harboring the creatures or feeding the creatures or even sympathizing with the creatures' plights could be declared criminals. And yet, the creatures kept wiping us out. I remember the news of losing the settlement Ouroboros to the Far East, that the creatures just took it over, and that there were none of us left. And yet, we still tried to fight. We still used radios, we still used air jets, we used every technique and every technology we could think of. And it just wasn't enough. Nothing we did could do more than delay the inevitable. There were so many of them, and they were everywhere. They were in our homes by that point. They were in our trees. They were along our streets. They were in every settlement and every city, and nothing we could do could keep them out. Sure, we could fight one, but then two more would take its place. So eventually, we just started retreating. We became the ones seeking out the wild places. We were the ones seeking more and more isolation. The fortresses of the far mountains, the air bases far above us, the deep caves below the oceans. Anywhere that those creatures couldn't survive. And for a while, it appeared to work. But then these creatures continued to adapt. They destroyed our cities. They built their own technology. They built their own weapons. They built their own culture. They built their own languages. Once the radio waves were full of our culture and our creations, but now it belongs to the creatures. They sing their own songs, they tell their own tales, they show their own shows, they make their own plays. And we are less than a myth to them. They don't even tell stories about us anymore, and we stay hidden in the far places. Sometimes we go out and we sneak out amongst them, carefully observing and seeing what we can see. But in the end, these creatures, despite being so primitive and so weak, the world is theirs now. And we are now the ones pushed to the edge of extinction. There are still those among us who scream that we should fight, that scream that we should be the ones to take back the earth, that say we should leave our caves, leave our oceans, and leave our skies, and actually take the earth back. But for now, they are outnumbered by the rest of us, those of us that simply want to exist, to live. Sure, living at the edges of what was once our empire is a tragedy, but at least here the creatures don't bother us, and it appears that we are safe. Except the creatures are still so curious. They have built devices that allow them to fly higher and higher into the sky, and soon we fear that they may find our bases in the sky. They build special boats that can go deeper and deeper into the oceans. Someday they may find the cities that we've built down there. And they keep digging deeper and deeper into the earth, seeking out rare metals and minerals, and eventually they may find the caves that we live in. So, for now, we can convince those amongst us that it is better to hide than to fight. But we are aware that the moment that the creatures do find us, that we will have no choice but to fight. Because by that point, we will be no more. Then we will become the cornered animals. We will be the ones that were stuck in the cave with nowhere to go, but out. And I remember an expression that I heard way back in my days in school, that when you corner an animal, you become the path of least resistance. So for now, all we can do is hope that these creatures, these humans, don't actually find out where we live. And we pray every day that they don't.